Hey Watchers, today we are once again exploring the bizarre comedic side of the Coen brothers, and no one could play the lead character in this film better than the Baron of Bizarre himself, Nicolas Cage. So hold on to your huggies, you jailbirds, because it's time for 1987's Raising Arizona. Welcome to the Midnight Watch Podcast, the show where we discuss classic, cult, and modern classic movies.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Josh Baruto, and we review movies that are at least 10 years old. And fair warning, we're big on spoilers here, straight from the get-go.
We rate these movies in 4 categories. Number 1, the level of impact and success it had when it was released. Number 2, how relevant is it today? Number 3, our own personal enjoyment of this movie. And number 4, is it a midnight watch?
And what is a midnight watch? It's a film which completely captures your attention, drawing you in. No matter what time or what part you start watching the movie, you have to finish it.
Well, hey guys, we just want to welcome our first guest of the year, also season 2. We have Alden Olmstead, who is, I've known him originally as a BMX bike entrepreneur years ago, which he's still doing that. And then later on as a filmmaker. I remember going to, he would throw these 8mm film festivals in his backyard. Those were super fun.
I forgot. Oh, wow. I forgot you were at one of those. Yeah.
That was a while ago. Yeah. I think you came by and you filmed me and Chris recording at that studio.
And we did a little music video. That's right.
Made a music video for him.
Yeah, I did a music video of you, and I think it was the early days of YouTube, and I didn't understand the compression versus actual size. So I think I need to re-upload it as at a higher resolution, because Super 8mm actually is, if it's scanned in digitally, it's a high resolution.
Right.
But I think the version of your song on YouTube is, it's not up to our current standards.
I don't know. It's got a cool retro look to it, so it's it's got its own charm.
Do you still film stuff with Super 8?
It's been a couple years. I thought I was never going to do it again. And then a friend was getting married at the lighthouse near the Golden Gate Bridge 2 years ago. And I told her I'm not really doing it. And she just bugged me and begged. And so I caved in, did it. Yeah. So I did it. That was about a year and a half ago. It turned out great. And that one's on YouTube too. And it was one of those foggy days in San Francisco. So everything is white and gray. And then the bright flowers and the wedding dress, it pops. It just looks great.
Wow.
That is awesome.
That is super cool. So yeah, Alden, that's one of the main reasons we brought you on the show is just your film background. You just released your most recent project, 30 Bikes, which is the story of your bike company, Homestead Bikes.
Yep.
And you want to tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. That's a story I never thought I would tell. But yeah, I dropped out of college in the early 90s to start a BMX bike company, and I did. And after about 4 or 5 years, I realized, running it by myself was pretty tough. But the main thing that made it tough was that I had used all my college money, what would have been my college money if I hadn't dropped out, to make a batch of 50 bikes. And the company made 30 of the bikes, which is why the movie's called 30 Bikes. They made 30, and then they sold the company without telling me. And so they stiffed me on 20 bikes. And so the movie is about me trying to find what happened to the 30 that did get made. And as you see in the movie, we find some of the bikes. We actually find them in attics and garages and closets. And the movie turned out great. And it just obviously then the pandemic came along. So I wrote a book, which I just found a publisher for. And the book is called A Virus Ate My Movie. And so it's a little bit of a mix of low budget filmmaking as well as telling the story of dropping out of college to start this bike company. So I'm hoping that the book will be out in about 3 months. Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it either. The movie was awesome. Being a local guy, growing up in, where you grew up, it was very cool to see a lot of the stuff in the movie, a lot of the people in the movie I know or know of.
Right.
The first time I ever saw you, I think, was back in '95. I went to Mount Gilead Bible Camp, summer camp, their high school camp, and the BMX track was brand new that year. And so you were there running it. I remember you jumping the creek and doing some other fun, crazy stuff, but that was my first introduction to you. But it was really fun seeing the movie and just kind of reliving all of that. And it's just an awesome story. Anybody out there interested in it, please go check it out. It's a very, very fun movie.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I did watch it as well, and I thought it was really good. And since I didn't know you before this interview, it was kind of nice, like getting kind of get to know you through the movie itself. And so it was really good. And I was waiting for some like Quentin Tarantino vengeance at the end, but it worked out.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
Thank you very much. Now I don't want to go to, we want to keep our podcast on the topic for this
right.
one, but I will tell you the short story is that the two twin brothers that helped me film the movie, we each of us had our own opinion about what's our plan B if the guy at the end of the movie slams the door in the face. I mean, we had all kinds of scenarios. I will tell you that we had him sign the waiver to allow his rights to be used, his image to be used in the movie. We had him sign that before I confronted him about that.
Okay.
Question, because
wow.
And it turned out great. And maybe we'll do another episode on that later on. But
right. This is Tennessee. Yeah. There could have been firearms involved. So.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to do a spoiler alert because
check it out.
An executive from Vans actually is watching the movie tonight.
Oh, wow.
I forgot to tell you that. Yeah. And if that goes awesome. Well, then maybe I'll get a limited distribution on their channel or in their stores. I don't know what it's going to look like, but let's hope that he likes it tonight.
Yeah, man. Fingers crossed. That is super exciting.
That would be totally legit. All right. Well, let's go ahead to the main agenda here. We are reviewing Raising Arizona. Now, this is Alden's pick, actually. We were asking him to pick a movie that meant a lot to him. This movie came out in 1987. It was directed by the Coen brothers. It was written by the Coen brothers. The cinematographer was Barry Sonnenfeld, who went on to direct the Men in Black trilogy and the Addams Family movies. Not the newest one, but the live action ones. And then the score was by Carter Burrell, and the budget, they had aimed to do it under $5 million, but it looks like it was about $6 million was the end budget. And then the box office made $29.2 million. So this was, from what the Coen brothers were saying, this was one of their most profitable movies, actually, because most of their movies kind of become cult movies later, but this one actually made some serious money for them. And so that was pretty cool. We've got the cast here with Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, Randall Craig Cobb, John Goodman, Frances McDormand, William Forsythe, Terry Wilson, Sam McMurray, and TJ Kunn. So we got a fair amount of really good actors in here. I totally forgot that William Forsythe was in this, and he's almost unrecognizable in this for the roles that he does later in the movies, because he's always like the super hardcore captain. I mean, he's with Nicolas Cage in The Rock, which we reviewed last year. And so I thought that was cool, but
yeah, because I always think of him in his older roles. So it was really cool, seeing, young Forsythe. It's pretty awesome.
I just got to say real quick, like since I had a baby during the break, my wife and I, well, it's my wife obviously, but we, the whole part though, where they're talking in the movie about like, oh, you got to get the dip tat shot and you blah, blah, blah. And then later they're like, get out of the house. And then William Forsythe's like, do they need to get the dip tap shot? I thought that was so funny because I was like, that's so relevant in my life right now. It was good. So the first question that we normally have is figuring out like, where was the first time you saw this movie? Let's go with the guest first. So Aldon, when was the first time you saw this?
I wish I could have said it was at a cool drive-in or a movie theater, but I believe this would have been a VHS rental back in the day. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think it was in the early 90s. I think it was one of those, bizarro movies, which I will just tell you a side plug for video stores. Obviously we all love streaming. I love streaming. I'm not talking about the good old days, but there was something fun about picking out a movie it was a process that is totally gone. The art of selecting the movie in some ways was part of the whole evening experience. Yes. It really was.
Yeah. I remember so many hours wandering around Blockbuster or Home Video or Bradley Video or,
So I had created I'm just remembering all this now. I had created a 15-minute rule with all my friends. I said, if we don't find something in 15 minutes, and this rule applied every time we went to see a movie, if we don't find something in 15 minutes, we're going to get something bad or something we've already seen and we're paying again for. Because I realized that there's a little bit of spontaneity where you just kind of need to take a chance. And I still think it was something related to that image of Nicolas Cage, which is the great opening image, which is part of the great story structure of this movie. That Nicolas Cage Hawaiian shirt scene with the mugshot. I think it's on the back. Maybe I'm just guessing now. I think it's on the back of the DVD or the video. I just think that we just thought, what the heck is this movie? And, without going into a long list, I mean, how many movies have the opening credits don't come in until 11 or 12 minutes? I mean, it's right. Sucked in because you're like, wait, what the heck just happened? Was that the first 10, 12 minutes was just the opening? What are we in for? So we were sucked in, man. I mean, we were just, when the opening credits happened, we were just loving it.
Did you know who the Coen brothers were before you watched this movie?
I don't think so. As far as it, I wouldn't have known that they were in the same category as like a Spielberg or the guy that directed Rocky or something. I wouldn't have thought about it in that way. I might have thought, I don't think I did. No.
So you said it was the early 90s when you watched it?
I think probably when we do was just a rental. Yeah. I don't remember seeing it. And I will say that this is I'm not just thinking about this all today, but I think this was the first movie that I could point to that said, where I thought to myself, wow, that's a movie that I would like to have written or have put together like that. I think this might be the movie that got me, it's not like I watched it and then went, making movies the next day. I can't tell some story like that. But I think it was the first movie that made me think, wow, I guess you really can, you don't have to have a budget of Star Wars. You can make a crazy movie with these amazing side characters. I mean, obviously Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter are great, but like you just mentioned, William Forsythe and John Goodman. I mean, the B and the C and the D characters in this movie
are fantastic.
I mean, I would put them up against any.
Right.
They're just so colorful and amazing.
Yeah. And I think if there's one thing that the Coen brothers have done is like, there are no throwaway actor moments. There are no throwaway characters.
Yeah.
I feel in any of their movies. I mean, like you said, even tiny little things. I mean, Brother, Where Art Thou? There's Jillian Welch asking to buy the Soggy Bottom Boys record in the store, and it's like that's Jillian Welch. I don't know, just everything is meaningful in their movies like that. But anyways, how about you, Jeremy? What's the first time you saw this?
I don't remember, honestly. I know it was probably like 12 years ago. I was on my kick of just trying to watch tons of movies from the library, and so I rented as many Coen Brothers movies as I could, and I don't think I had seen "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" yet, but I watched this movie though, and I was like not expecting. I'd seen there more crime ones like Blood Simple, or I think
Miller's Crossing.
Miller's Crossing, like that stuff. And so watching this, and then that, like you're saying, that opening yodel thing that's 11 minutes in, I was just like, what is this? A little turn to the right, like that. Yeah. I was hooked. I was like, this is awesome. And so I don't remember exactly when, but I say probably like 10, 12 years ago. What about you, Josh?
Well, I'm definitely the Johnny come lately here. I've seen almost all of their movies, and I've never disliked any of them. Some I love more than others, but this was one that I'd seen like bits and pieces on TV for years, but I'd never actually sat down and just watched it front to back. And so I finished it today. I kind of
10 minutes ago.
Right before Aldon showed up, and there we go.
Nice.
But yeah, it was
Your opinion might be interesting then, because you like your brother said. I mean, you've got movies like Fargo. If Fargo was your first Coen Brothers movie, it's a great movie, obviously amazingly acted and a great script, but it's a little on the darker, gruesome side in some ways, and so it's easy to forget their their lightheartedness, especially in Miller's Crossing and those Blood Simple.
Right.
Again, they're well shot. They're amazing movies, but this one's a little more like, I would put this, if I was going to put up a trilogy, I would put Big Lebowski along with this and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
For sure.
Just
Lady Killers is pretty good too, though, as far as.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
As far as the comical side, but that not as slapsticky as which this one is. Oh, we'll get into that. Let's.
Right. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah. Hey. All right. Well, yeah. And to explain this story it's a weird one. So, Josh, why don't you give us that synopsis? I think that'll probably be the best way to do it. Once again, everyone, throw some cash at Wikipedia so they don't shut down, because we're going to use them again here for the because we're too lazy to write our own synopsis. So keep them alive. Here's the rundown. All right, here we go. Convenience store robber H.I. Hi McDonough and police officer Edwina, or Ed, meet after she takes his mugshots during one of his multiple stays in prison. During a later stay in prison, Hi learns that Ed's fiance has left her and later proposes to her after being released. After marrying, they move into a desert mobile home and Hi gets a job in a machine shop. They want to have children, but Ed is infertile, and they're unable to adopt a child due to Hi's criminal record. After learning of the Arizona quintuplet sons of locally famous furniture magnate Nathan Arizona, Hi and Ed become jealous and hatch a plan to kidnap one of the babies, whom they believe to be Nathan Arizona Jr. Upon returning home with Nathan Jr., they are greeted by Hi's old cellmates, Gail and is it Evel? Is that what it was? Yeah, I think so.
Evel Snotes, who convince Hi to shelter them after their recent escape from prison, also tempting him to return to his old life of crime. That evening, Hi has an intense nightmare of a monstrous biker, Leonard Smalls. The next day, during a visit from Hi's foreman, Glenn, and his family, Hi angrily punches Glenn in the face after he suggests that he and Hi exchange wives, costing him his job. That night, Hi succumbs to the temptation to rob a convenience store while going to buy diapers for Nathan Jr., infuriating Ed and nearly leading to his arrest. When Glenn returns to the next day to fire Hi, he reveals that he has deduced that Hi and Ed kidnapped Nathan Jr. and threatens to turn them in unless they agree to give custody of the child to him and his wife. After Gail and Evel overhear this conversation, they kidnap Nathan Jr. themselves, forcing Hi and Ed to band together to rescue him. Meanwhile, Leonard Smalls approaches Nathan Arizona and offers to bring back his son for $50,000, but decides to sell Nathan Jr. on the black market when Arizona refuses to pay. Gail and Evel accidentally leave Nathan Jr. behind at a bank shortly after robbing it, nearly allowing Smalls to capture Nathan Jr. shortly before Hi and Ed arrive to rescue him. In the ensuing struggle, Ed grabs Nathan Jr. while Hi holds Smalls back and ultimately manages to kill him by pulling the pin on one of the hand grenades in his belt. Feeling remorseful for their actions, Hi and Ed sneak into the Arizona home to return Nathan Jr. to his parents, but they're caught by Nathan Arizona before they can sneak back out. After learning why Hi and Ed took his son, Arizona sympathizes with their predicament and decides not to turn them in, advising them to sleep on it, when he learns that Hi and Ed are considering splitting up. In the final scene, Hi lies down to sleep beside Ed. He has a series of prophetic dreams about the future fates of his friends. Gail and Evel willingly return to prison after realizing that they aren't ready to return to society. Glenn is ticketed by a Polish-American police officer after offending him with an ethnic joke. And Nathan Jr. eventually becomes a football star after getting a football for Christmas from a kindly couple who wishes to remain unknown. The dream ends with an elderly couple, implied to be Hi and Ed, enjoying a holiday visit from a large family of children and grandchildren.
Okay.
And that is the rundown.
So let me give a little bit of trivia with this real quick. So the Coen brothers, Francis McDormand and Holly Hunter, they all knew each other like pretty well. And then of course the Coen brothers, I think it was Ethan, helped edit Evil Dead. So that one scene when Mrs. Arizona finds out that Nathan Jr. is missing, like where the camera is all crazy and goes straight into the house, that's straight from Evil Dead, like that style.
Oh.
That's what I thought. This whole movie,
Right.
I just got to say, all of the action shots, and especially the first person point of view with the camera, just, tracking
Right.
where somebody would be going. It's straight up Sam Raimi. And I had to do a little research myself. They had to, know each other. And then I find out they'd worked with each other. But I know they were inspired by classic slapstick, directors back in the 30s and 40s. But my gosh, especially this movie more than any of their other movies, they had to have been vibing with Sam Raimi because it looks like Evil Dead the way the action shots are.
Well, they worked with him on the Crime Wave. Remember, like 2 years before this. Yeah, they were close at the time. I'm not sure. Like, I'm sure they're probably fine, cool still. But I was surprised with this movie with Nicolas Cage, for example. Like his character is like Nicolas Cage playing this character is perfect. And just it's perfect. Like he's just wild. He's restrained at different parts. And I was wondering, like, why was he not in other Coen brother movies? Like, he just seemed like he would be a perfect fit. But apparently they had creativity differences with the Coen brothers where he was putting some input, but the Coen brothers had this so meticulously planned out that they just totally ignored his creative input. And so
shut him down.
Yeah. So they didn't work with him again. They said that it was good working with him, but they haven't worked with him since, which I think was actually kind of a disappointment because I think that he would have done amazing if he continued on. Cause like John Goodman and Helen Hunt and stuff, like they're in other ones, and John Goodman's in like every other Coen brother movie.
Right. Well, Frances McDormand, I swear, I think is she in every single one of their movies.
Frances McDormand is married to one of the Coen brothers.
Well, there you go.
There we go.
but yes, no, Nicolas Cage. I know I could see that the Coen brothers. Speaking of what Josh was saying, that there's no wasted images. Also in this movie, you get the feeling that there's no wasted dialogue. Every single, or you were saying, sorry, Josh, that there's no wasted characters. There's no wasted dialogue. Every single line relates to something that's going to happen later, or that's something that happened. I mean, it's just. It really is just a course almost. It's like a crash course in dialogue and in plot, how plot can come out through the dialogue and how great that is. And so I could understand them not wanting any input because this of all the movies that they've done, to me, this one just feels like it doesn't have one wasted shot, dialogue or character. Everybody is they're exactly where they're supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter what the stories that happen to get them there, obviously the editing, makes it tighter, but still, I mean, it's just a finely tuned machine, and there's not even a drip of oil anywhere.
Right. It's so funny. I completely agree with you, but having just freshly researched the movie today, I found out that Roger Ebert basically said the exact opposite of what you said. Siskel loved it. Siskel said it was great. He gave it a thumbs up, and Ebert was just like, it goes a little too long in parts where it doesn't need to, and there's dialogue that doesn't need to be. And I'm just which I completely disagree with him. Like you, it's hilarious. But again, this was, I don't know. This is my first time seeing the movie, and I've already seen so many of their other movies, and I still, really enjoyed it. So I don't know if it was just a taste thing that he wasn't ready for, or
I thought that about Big Lebowski. When Big Lebowski took me like 3 watchings to really enjoy it. For some reason, it felt it's like I wanted to like it, and it just felt kind of just like, the dude didn't really care, so why should I care?
Right.
And I don't know. And so maybe it was something like that. I think they did such a good job at making it look so bizarro.
Yeah.
That's why, and I can talk about it later, but this is the movie that made me believe after I made my first movie, but before I started writing screenplays and becoming a little bit of a teacher, this movie made me a believer in story structure because it's it's hidden, and yet they follow the basic story structure of 99% of movies. They follow it to a T in this movie, but you never know it because it appears to be so crazy and bizarro, but it's actually not. It's just this movie is a testament to their genius at hiding the amazing, like very tight structure. So I give Roger Ebert a little bit of a pass on that one.
Right.
Well, I know he'd
I
sometimes will change his opinion.
Yeah, that's very true. He's humble enough to know when he's wrong, or he was. But I think too, it's like every single one of their movies becomes a cult classic. And I feel like it's a lot of their movies. You had like The Big Lebowski, which I agree with you. I think it took me a couple times before I started to really see the genius of it and appreciate it. But that's got to be for a lot of people because their movies, you know, they do become these legendary cult classics. And unless you're just a huge fan from the get-go and you know what you're getting into, I could see where maybe it takes people a little bit, a couple watches to realize and to grab on to what's happening.
Well, you have to remember too, though, before this, the only thing they were known for was the hard crime drama Blood Simple. And so for them to do a completely opposite, like wacky movie. So Roger Ebert's expecting another tight, like crime movie, and he gets Nicolas Cage with his like Woody Woodpecker hair, and he's for the whole time. And so the tattoo, I could see like
tattoo, Ed. Get his tattoo, Ed.
I could see why it was just like didn't like it, and it makes sense because like we're coming at this knowing that the Coen brothers make really wacky comedies and then they make really gritty crime movies. And so we kind of expected that going into it. But if you went into this cold turkey, not knowing anything about it, that would be pretty something. And I do really, I think the Coen brothers are really special because they completely commit to whatever they're going to do. And that takes a lot of guts specifically in Hollywood to do that. And it's awesome.
Well, and even we all three mentioned, we didn't talk about this before, we all three mentioned that the opening credits coming on at 11 minutes in, it throws you off. And so there's it right from the get-go, you're kind of just thrown off, like within what 4 minutes he's proposing to Ed. And so then they get married at like minute 6 or 7, they get married, and you're like, man, this movie is just kind of, it's almost a little bit like Up. Now, I didn't think of that till just now. But
that's true.
Yeah.
The first 10, 15 minutes, it's almost like how much of these people's story can we kind of tell in the first 10 minutes? Because in screenwriting term, you would call it laying too much pipe. You really don't need to tell as much backstory as you think. It's actually more enjoyable to come in when the crime is about to happen. You don't need to know the driving up to the store. You want to see some action, and the first 10 minutes of the movie, if this were a screenplay, what's the saying, that the producers, they'll read the first 10 minutes of a script and then throw it in the garbage if it doesn't grab them. Well, if I were reading this one, it would probably grab me in like 2 to 3 minutes, pages.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The dialogue is so snappy between it. I love Holly Hunter though. She's just so funny in everything she does. Yeah. And but
even just the character of her voice is even just so intriguing. Just, hearing her talk.
Right.
Yeah. But I want to go back to the cinematography real quick. I was so impressed. So many different styles of cinematography in this movie. Like you were saying, it's like frantic, like when they're running through like the house when Nicolas Cage is being chased. They run into the grocery store. The cop has like unlimited bullets apparently in his gun.
Just shooting everywhere.
Shooting randomly everywhere. Apparently in Arizona. Like, I forgot to say there's an actual school, like I think called Florence, Arizona, and they did not want to be associated with this movie because of the recklessness that people showed in this, which I thought that was pretty funny. But just that, and then like also, for example, like the one shot, which is kind of a classic shot, but like when the baby's sitting in the carrier in the middle of the road, and then they've come flying up and they stop right before that scene was shot in reverse. But like that's a classic old school scene. So they have like new. Like groundbreaking techniques, and then they pay homage to these older ones, and they have like that homage to the Doctor Strangelove on when they're in the prison. So they've got like, what is that, OPE that's on the wall, And
Oh yeah.
and I was like, oh, that, because I saw that and I was like, wait, that's a Kubrick thing. And I know it's in The Shining too, but that started from Doctor Strangelove. So yeah, and this is also
yeah.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think and it's before my time, but I think the Police Story television show was the one to have the camera on the top of the police car, and then you would just see the lights, and they would go into all different scenes.
Oh, are you talking about Adam 12?
Or Adam 12, yeah, Adam 12. So I think they did that when, like when they're following through the house, and there's clearly some parts where the camera's just going through, and and when it says, I think it's around the 25-minute mark when he says, when he has his first dream, and he says, I realized the hell, the fury that was going to be released when Florence, Arizona realized one of her babies was gone, and the camera goes up over the fountain.
Right.
Impossible for a cameraman, even with steady cam, to do.
Right. You know how I bet how they did that though.
It's hilarious how the camera follows and then goes up the ladder. Right into her mouth. I think that's an homage to those Adam 12 type of intro.
Well, that makes sense. That one was specifically to Evil Dead, because I know in the Evil Dead they just put the camera on a plank, and then two people were running on both sides of the plank, and so they probably did that. But I totally know what you're saying with the Adam 12 shot with other sequences with that. Like the one thing that's funny that also there is he's supposed to be, what's his name? Leonard Snoots is supposed to be. Wait, no, that's not Leonard Snoots.
Leonard Smalls, the biker dude.
Yeah, he's supposed to be riding a Harley, but it was actually a Honda Shadow that they had like put stuff over, and they did that specifically because they wrecked the bike at the end, so it was a lot cheaper for them to wreck a Honda.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I thought that was hilarious. But apparently, Randall Cobb did not really ride motorcycles, so the part when he like rides up to see where the brothers escaped from the hole, he rode into the hole apparently by accident, and so I was like, oh, that's pretty intense.
I know, I was reading about him today, and apparently that guy was just an absolute force of nature, just loud and big, and just kind of a WWE kind of personality, really.
I'm looking real quick to see.
Well, speaking of, while you're looking, going along with the cinematography, I just thought it was super cool to go back and see a little bit of the evolution of Joel Coen's vision, cinematically, from the very slapsticky, spastic kind of, filming that happened in this movie, and then even jumping ahead to Oh Brother and Burn After Reading or Lady Killers, and it's a lot smoother and I don't want to say artistic, because what he did in this movie is artistic, but there's definitely, I think, just some maturity and some polish that came along later. So it was kind of cool to see where he came from, and then ended up more recently comedically speaking, with his angles and whatnot. Yeah.
There's so many parts in this movie that are just so goofy. Like the part when he's robbing the convenience store again, and Holly Hunter's yelling at him like, "How dare you!" And he's just like bobbing back and forth. And he's like, "Oh, that's my wife. Hang on,
hurry up! I'm in Dutch with the wife."
That's right. Hurry up, boy.
Yeah. There's just so many little sequences like that. This was so good with Nicolas Cage. Like the part when he keeps picking up the babies and he's like, quiet. And he's just doing all that.
Just juggling babies.
Yeah.
And the dialogue, my gosh. I mean, the dialogue.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get my charge. The dialogue is
what I want to talk about. It's so, I learned straight up vocabulary words from this movie when I first saw it.
Yes.
And it's the way that they use it. It's just a poetic, nobody else does it. And, there's so many, the movie's obviously set in Arizona, but you would think like you were going back to the 1940s in the South.
Yes.
A lot of the words are like you would hear in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou or something. He says, he says, I'm in Dutch with the wife, but even they ask him, do you know what recidivism means, boy?
Right. At the parole hearing.
Yeah. And I remember thinking recidivism, and he's like, well, factually, most, men your age had, and they're just, it's just crazy how many different, words they use that you just don't hear.
Right.
Yeah, when John Goodman and William Forsythe get out of the jail and they say, man, we were just about to tell your better half here that, when we were taking out, dumb luck, that. And they just have a way with dialogue in this movie.
Yes. They nail that. Like you said it, that old timey, speech and grammar and just they absolutely have mastered that. And every time they use it, and even when they go into like a serious role, like some of my favorite dialogue from them is in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" No Country for Old Men, which is, that's a straight Western right there. And just the somber, very classic kind of Western way of delivering lines. But they nail it. They go back in time and it's amazing.
Yeah. And even though it's based on a book that they didn't write, they didn't write that book, but they still are able to place their vocabulary, in it.
And especially a movie like No Country. Cormac McCarthy, that dude, you want to talk about throwing $5 words around. Yeah. That guy is ridiculous for doing that. And yet they respect him and what he wrote in that book. And then they're able, like you said, it's still their movie. It's still their story. It's amazing. Yeah.
That movie has grown on me a lot, but I just realized one of the opening in the first 10 minutes when she finds out that she can't have a child and Nicolas Cage says, the doctor explained that her insides were a rocky place where my seed could find no purchase. Right? Who would write that and who would write that and think that a Hollywood producer would even understand what you're talking about?
Right.
But I think because they were a team and they already had some clout, I think they could get away with it.
Yeah, they said that they had the screenplay and the storyboards completely done. So when they went in to pitch for $5 million to do the movie, they had to have everything meticulously done. So otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten the money, because they originally wanted to do the Hudsucker Proxy as their second movie. But that's a $40 million movie, so they couldn't do that.
Right. Yeah,
that was the one they did after, right? Isn't that their next one?
I think they did Miller's Crossing. Yeah.
Yep.
Miller's Crossing. Yeah. Hudsucker was great too, but this one just has an edge that not all of their movies have. It's fun, but it's got, they're kidnapping a baby. It's
right.
I was telling my wife the story of the plot. I was like, do you want to watch this with me? And she was like, well, what's it about? And I was telling them that the plot, and I was like, it's okay. It's actually funny. It's not bad.
It sounds super dark. But
yeah. But yeah, that was
even the father, Nathan Arizona at the end. These people kidnapped his child, and his child was missing for 48 hours or something, and he's just like okay with it. You seem like good people who made a mistake. It's all right,
But in this world that they created, I buy it though. That didn't pull me out of the movie. I was like, that totally makes sense with him. And
I completely agree. Nicolas Cage just seems like a pretty decent guy. He just seems like a guy who truly is genuinely trying to do the right thing for his family or his wife or whatever.
Well, and again, going back to the not lost dialogue, they say it at the parole hearing, son, you never use live ammo, so we can't keep you. So the fact that he doesn't use live ammo, you go, well, I guess I can't be too upset at him. He's only hurting himself.
Right.
And
he's just not real smart.
Yeah. But no, that's a good point. And it goes to, I will tell you that moment of them kidnapping the baby, that was when I became a believer in the story structure model. That I became a moderator of a writers group in LA, because I doubted it. Like everyone else, you read it and it sounds like a formula, and you're like, I don't want to make a formula movie, and I want to make exciting movies that are different with interesting characters. And then at minute number 12 or page 12 in the script, that's when the catalyst of every movie is supposed to happen, or some people call it the inciting incident. So it's when Obi-Wan asks Luke, I want you to come with me to Alderaan. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the catalyst, an outside force grabbing a hero onto the journey. So I didn't believe it like anyone else. And I was like, what? Well, I'm going to put in a movie that I know is not going to follow this tight, ridiculous structure. And I put in Raising Arizona, and I left the display on my DVD player. and it said, and I'm not making this up, it's supposed to happen at minute number 12. It happens at 12:26, and I still remember that. I even have to look it up. And if you go back to the beginning, there's 20 seconds of opening credits. So if you want to understand that story structure is not here to constrain the story, it's to get the most emotion out of an hour and a half or a 2-hour movie. And that's, we need to know that this is an exciting story or an exciting journey worth taking, and we better be sucked in within the first 10 to 15 minutes, or else we're probably going to find something else to do. And that, when I saw that it was at 12:26, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then you think about, well, what could be more primal as far as a catalyst as stealing a baby?
Right.
But not stealing a baby because you are going to have a ransom. You're stealing a baby because of your own need. And so the guy that I became became my mentor is the way he puts it is the catalyst has to be primal. It can't just be, Happy Gilmore wants to be a hockey player. No, even it sounds cheesy, he's got to raise money to buy his grandmother, save his grandmother's house.
Right.
So the primal part of this is so genius that they're gonna take a baby, but it's because they got more than they can handle.
Right.
They won't even notice.
They're not malicious at all. It's so not malicious. And even like Jeremy was saying earlier, when you see Nicolas Cage juggling all these babies and he's trying to be gentle with them and, take care for them while he's trying to kidnap one of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they look like they've got the upper hand. That's what's
I know, constantly.
I'm trying to remember. There was one thing I was going to say. Oh yeah. So I wanted to talk about, you were saying about the dialogue, and I had read that they based a lot of the dialogue off of the King James version of the Bible and then old Southern magazines. And so that's where they pulled a lot of the dialogue from.
Wow.
Because it sounds like a prairie to home companion, like that style of almost of talking mixed with the, there's a movie, I'm trying to remember what it's called. I just blanked out. Oh yeah. What was that? Bone Tomahawk.
Oh yeah.
And that movie. That movie has excellent dialogue. It reminds, like the dialogue here where they were using, like you were saying, $5 words and stuff. That movie is chock full of that. And so it's like if you have an education in the West time back in the day, like you would use all of these different phrases and words and stuff. And so it works.
No, that makes sense. And they, they are obviously, they're Jewish, so they respect the Old Testament. And so that's why you get some Bible verses in there. And that's why you get some of that verbiage, like, the fury of Florence, Arizona type of thing. That's a biblical sounding phrase.
Euphemism.
That makes sense. The Southern, because like I said, the movie's Arizona, but you feel like you're, like, oh brother, where art thou? Like, and you're in the deep South in the 30s or 40s. So that actually really makes sense. Yeah.
Well, just their whole, they have more they can handle. That just sounds like a Southern concept. It's just
born in a barn or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, it is. Well, I don't have too much more on my list of this stuff, actually. Alden, I was really enjoying what you were saying. We got to kind of actually start wrapping this up for our final thoughts before we roll into our final verdicts on this movie. Do you guys have anything else specifically you want to hit?
I mean, I would just, like I said, I feel like it's a little bit a lot for people to ingest when they hear someone start talking about structure. So I don't want to overload, but I just think the first 25 minutes of this movie, if you ever have any inkling to get into story structure, you're, even if you don't want to write, this movie is just so great. The way the opening image of him, it's a mugshot, the setup, the theme, where he says Holly Hunter. So the theme is always stated by someone other than the main character. So Holly Hunter says the theme, but Nicolas Cage actually is narrating in her words. And he says, the way she looked at it is there's too much love and beauty in this world to not share it with someone. Well, I mean, man, you want to talk about a deep, heavy theme. And that's why this movie lasts, because it looks like a goofball, crazy, dust kicking up movie with John Goodman and just chasing a baby in the Huggies. Right. But at its core is a primal theme that how many people, even right now in this world, can relate to wanting to have a child and not being able to have a child.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you look at someone else and you see that they've got prosperity or fertility or whatever.
Right.
And you want some of that. And then, but these people, despite all their craziness, they don't have a pessimistic view of the world. They've got an optimistic world, that this world, despite all its craziness with all these characters, and even though we've got the lone biker of the apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
Right?
You should have been in a Mad Max movie.
Oh my
Right.
God. And he's actually in a movie called Uncommon Valor, if you want to watch a fun 80s throwaway guy movie.
Oh, that sounds
side
awesome.
note, yeah. And actually, I think he's a BMX biker in it, oddly enough. But anyway.
Really?
Yeah, I just
Connections.
Full circle.
Full circle. But with all those crazy characters, I love that the theme is primal and human, that everyone can relate to, of wanting a baby, and then you bit off more than you bargained for, and now you're going to save the baby and from the gates of hell. I mean, that's why these movies don't go out of style. Because you could still watch it and you want Nicolas Cage to make it. And the last thing I'll say is the genre of this movie is called what we call a golden fleece. And what that means is that we don't necessarily know at the end of the movie whether they got it or not.
Yeah.
So, in Die Hard is the genre is called a dude with a problem. Here's a regular dude and he's got an extraordinary problem. And so we know when that gets resolved. His marriage is going out and he's got terrorists in his building. But, by the way, but the golden fleece, like my 30 bikes at the end, even though I find what I thought I was looking for, it's up to the audience as to was the journey worth it. And, so they don't get, spoiler alert, they give back the baby, but then they give him the football. So they're still involved with his life and they maybe realize in whatever way that their life still had meaning. But anyway, it's just a great movie on so many levels. And we didn't even talk that much about the John Goodman and William Forsythe. I mean, what they bring into the movie of drawing Nicolas Cage through his arc. So they're what's called the B story, the Mr. Miyagi, if you want to think of it like Mr. Miyagi or Alan Rickman in Die Hard. These B story characters pull the lead character and make them change. And so they try to draw him into his old life. And come on, HI, we got a big score for you,
Right.
And then at the end, what they do is they steal what matters and they make him fight for it. They make him fight for what he said he cared about. And I mean, I don't think there's anything more noble than fighting for something that you're going to have to give up. They fight for a baby that they're going to give back. I mean, it's just like, again, I mean, I can just go on, but the Coen brothers, that's why, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That's why people love that movie, is because it harkens back to ancient storytelling that is never going to go out of style. And they do that maybe better than anyone else. We could talk about that on a later episode, but they harken back to these time-proven stories, and that's why their stories. That's why now they can, make whatever the movie they want. But that's they've given us a gift. They really have. Yeah,
they absolutely have. There's so much heart and love, encapsulated in that. And like you said, it never goes out of style. It doesn't matter that this movie was, 30 years old, and it still relates. I mean, Jeremy talking about, the baby aspect of it. And I relate as, a father at times having to, do whatever it takes to provide for the family, or it gets you wherever you're at. It gets you, the thing that you, want that you can't have or don't have. And
right. That's what makes it timeless.
Nailed it, man.
Yep.
Josh, you got any closing thoughts before we do the final verdict?
That was it, man. Except that I love the dream ending, and I love how like No Country ends with Tommy Lee Jones talking about a dream, and that's just it. I feel like their movies they're always great. Their endings are always amazing. They I don't know, they leave you just thoughtful in whatever way, whether it's imagery or whether it's a line, just the way he ends it with, maybe it was Utah, just kind of a little curveball at the end.
Just throw it in there. Yeah.
They leave you with a laugh. Yeah,
they do. Like I said, it's either thoughtful or funny or something. They always, a lot of movies don't, it'd be a great movie, but the ending is meh, or it's terrible. Right. And I just don't think they end their movies, bad at all. So that's all.
Well, we were going into, so this is going into actually how we rate the movie actually with the four categories. So yeah, this is perfect. So the first number one is the level of impact and success it had when it was released. So we rate this on like A through F on like how well do you think when it came out. That's why we like to do movies that are older, so that way we can see if it actually is still relevant or if it just like bombed and then now it's amazing, like Blade Runner, for example. But so the level of impact and success it had when it was released, money wise, this is one of their most profitable movies. So what do you guys think about the level of impact on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like I said, I saw it on video even though I was alive, but I just remember thinking it didn't really grasp because it was so out there. But I'm glad to know that it made enough money that they could, have some clout and go on and make another one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I would have to give it I was going to give it a B, but maybe an A. I mean, just based on a $5 million or $6 million budget and making 30 million. I mean, it's a good investment. That is a huge return on your investment. So, I mean, I guess you have to say it's an A even, especially for a very kind of indie type movie.
Yeah, I give it an A.
Yeah. I think A-. I think I would give it A-. Yeah.
Cool.
And we got number two, how relevant is it today? So with it, I'll start first on this one. So Aldon, you were bringing up a lot of great points on that. I'm trying to think though that I don't know. Well, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, like regarding film school. But for me, just kind of looking at this from just a fan of the Coen brothers and stuff, this isn't one of the ones that to me stands out. That's talked about a lot. Like for example, The Big Lebowski that's a huge one. And then I'm trying to think of Lady Killers, but like Oh Brother Where Art Thou though, that's also kind of relevant because that was the first movie that was digitally colorized. So that has its spot in cinema. But so this one, I would give it probably a C for is it still relevant, because it is a classic, but it's not really talked about as much as it used to be.
Yeah.
So
I would put it in the category of lost classics for them. I mean, I'd give it a B- probably for that category if I had to, but I think it's one that if people discover, like the Hudsucker Proxy, people discover it and they go, oh man, that was a lot of fun with great dialogue,
right.
Little bizarro, but I think it's just one of those lost gems. It's a little too long ago, and it just has a tendency to slip under the radar. And I think, like we already talked about, because Nicolas Cage didn't go on to other Coen Brothers movies,
right,
people kind of stick with the pantheon of their big ones,
Right.
And I think that actually, because he didn't go on with them, people look at this movie as kind of like, oh, it's kind of the offsetting one with Nicolas Cage, which instead of like now when you think of John Goodman, you're like, well, he's in a ton of Coen Brothers movies. That's just one of the guys. But then Nicolas Cage, though, you're like, well, he goes on to do other stuff. And so they kind of just split. So, but anyways, Josh, what do you think?
I'm right there. I'm either a C+ or a B- on that. It seems like people our age or a little bit older, just they are ones that have a fond memory of, oh yeah, Raising Arizona, I love that movie. But as far as when you talk Coen Brothers to people in general, you definitely get. I mean, Lebowski, that's you go into Hot
I would
Topic,
say,
and there's probably something Big Lebowski and Hot Topic still.
Oh yeah.
And Fargo, I feel like Fargo's up there.
Oh, right. Well, especially with the success of the TV show.
The TV
that's
show,
definitely boosted the movie back up again.
Right.
So, I think it's, Lost Classic is absolutely it. I think if you're any kind of a film fan and say you're working your way through their catalog and you hadn't seen it, like myself, I mean, I love it. Great movie.
Yeah.
But I would have thought about it in the past as, like I just wasn't in a hurry to get to it, but so glad I did.
Right. Well, it's kind of funny. Well, that almost that same thing happened to you though with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where you're like, you did not want to watch that movie, and I picked it, and you watched it, and you ended up loving it, but for filmmaking reasons, just on how it's made.
Well, that's why you're doing your podcast, right? So you're a recipient of your own purpose.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I wanted to start this podcast to make Josh watch movies that he would never watch, so far.
Success.
Yeah, we got 3 so far. This one, number 3 is 3. Number 3, our own personal enjoyment of the movie. So
Josh, what is your personal enjoyment of this movie?
I would give this a B plus. I really liked it. It's definitely, it's not my favorite of the Coen brothers, but it made me laugh. I actually ended up rewatching the first 15 minutes of the movie by accident. I tried to watch it yesterday and then something came up and I had to stop. And then today I'm like, well, I might as well just start at the beginning again. And like you said, Alden, that first 15, 20 minutes, I mean, that's the meat part of the movie. So I was super excited. That'll just be burned in my mind forever, that first 15. So yeah.
I would give it an A plus plus. It's not my favorite necessarily Coen brothers, but it's just, there are some people out there that can't watch movies again. The reason I give it such high marks is because if it's a movie that I want to watch again, because they've created a world that I like to enter.
Yeah.
So there's people that say, well, I can't watch a movie, I already saw it. But it's not because I don't want to hear the lines again, or I do. It's because the world is so bizarre that if I'm in the mood to go in that world, they've done such a great job. That's why I give it an A plus in my book, because, well, like The Big Lebowski is one of those where if you want to think about bowling and, and just being a dude in LA, you will watch that movie before that world.
Right. I mean, obviously we're not golfers, but so for me, this is why I like the different ratings for this, because everybody has a different slight rating. Like we were dissing Roger Ebert because he didn't like the movie, but it's his own personal opinion, and that's what makes it special. And so, like, for me, I actually am going to rate this lower than you guys, where I'm going to give it probably a D minus for personal enjoyment, where not D minus, C minus. Like, I liked it, but I probably won't really watch this one very often. It's not something that I come back to all the time. But I will say, though, Alden, with what you were explaining about the opening with this, and especially how I'm starting to write a screenplay. So while you were talking, I was like, I got to write this down. I'm going to like everything you're saying. I think that's fantastic. And I'm going to go back and watch that again. And I will say, like, I love the beginning part when the yodeling hits at the 11-minute mark. It hits hard. It just immediately you're like, oh, we're in for a ride. So it is a totally solid movie. Just for me, I probably won't really watch this movie too much, but that's just a personal choice. So yeah. Let's go to the big one right now. Number 4 for me. Is it a midnight watch? It's not a midnight watch for me, but what about you guys?
I think if you're in the right mood, yeah. I'm thinking because he's searching for Huggies diapers at midnight, and when they're driving around in the streets, grabbing the baby, that is such an iconic shot. It's in the trailer. Obviously, whoever's editing that trailer is like, oh, you guys gave me gold. So when his arm goes out of the car to grab the baby, I mean, I would put it as a midnight watch. Yes.
Nice.
So I'm going to give it a half a midnight watch, only because, like I've said before on other episodes or other movies that we've covered, if depending on when the movie was on, depending on the scene that was on,
right.
I would watch the scene.
You're right. If he was getting chased by a cop in the convenience store with the diapers,
you're gonna watch it. You're not turning it off.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There is a ton of great sequences in this, and honestly, I haven't watched the Coen Brothers movie that I didn't like, so you're gonna enjoy it. Anyways, I think that wraps it up right now. Alden, where can we find you? What's a plug for online or anything?
Yeah, thank you. It's my name, aldenolmstead.com is my website. And you can find latest films that I'm working on. And 30 Bikes is watchable right now on Vimeo on demand. So I think if you typed in 30 Bikes Vimeo, Vimeo, you probably find it. And you can watch it in HD right now. The book, A Virus Ate My Movie, will be out in 3 to 4 months. Actual brand new Homestead bikes are being welded right now in Sonoma County.
Dude, I wanted to know that. I was like, oh, I'm so interested. Like, I'm not into the BMX stuff, but your movie was like, okay, now I got to know what happens.
That's what everyone wants to. And well, there was a guy in Oklahoma. We went through your town, right?
Right.
It was towards the end. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thank you guys. If you want to check out this movie, I rented it on Amazon Prime. Where did you guys watch it?
My DVD is in storage, so I actually rewatched it on YouTube. I just did it on YouTube, and it's great. Yeah.
Cool.
Watch the full movie.
I rented it on iTunes.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks for being on here, man. It was an absolute pleasure. We're gonna have to have you on again.
Yeah,
do this again. This was a lot of fun. So yeah,
I'm in the mood to go watch. I think I'm going to go watch No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
I'm in the mood now.
Yeah.
That movie has like one of the greatest endings. I love just how it ends so much. Well, this was awesome. We got to have you back on the show, man. Thank you again. It was so much fun doing this.
Special thanks to our sound producer, Jake Colvin. If you guys had as much fun as we did on this episode, we'd love it if you shared it with your family, friends, and anyone you think would like it.
Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We're found on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and many other platforms. Also, we'd love it if you visit our Instagram or Facebook page and join the conversation on what is your Midnight Watch. And you can directly reach us at the Midnight Watch Podcast at gmail.com.
Okay, everyone, you have a fantastic week. And as always, keep up the watch.